Hi, I'm Jim Stroud, and this is my podcast. Do you know what social leadership is? What about expressive writing? And have you heard about this thing called a deep coalition? No? Well, you're in luck because I have a guest who will explain it all right after this. The Recruiting Life is a newsletter that gives a whimsical view of the world of work. It aspires to educate and entertain with articles, comics, videos, podcasts, contests, and more. It is produced on a weekly basis by yours truly, Jim Stroud, and is supported by readers like you. Topics in this newsletter include the future of work, current labor trends, sourcing passive candidates, and more. Subscribe now and receive it every Monday in your email by going to jimstroud.com/subscribe. That's jimstroud.com/subscribe. Link in the podcast description. Don't wait, subscribe now. Operators are standing by. Hello and welcome to the Jim Stroud podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Special guest, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, Jim. Well, thank you so much for having me on your special podcast. Well, I love that question, right? It always reminds me of who do you want to be when you grow up? So, who am I? Well, first off, I think it probably do the audience justice. My name is pronounced Katiya, and it is an acronym. So it does stand for Keenly Aiming to Inspire You Always.
Ooh.
And yes, I am a Hmong American. Who I am, I would have to say, if it's a one-liner, I am a person who lives deeply. So everything that I do, in my personal life or professional life, or in collaboration with people like you, is always around hitting that vision line of, am I living deeply? Am I doing deep work? Am I having a deep discussion? Am I connecting at a deep level, especially at a human deep level? And so I'm simply an ordinary human who lives deeply in all directions of her life.
Wow, that sounds like almost like a religious philosophy. Almost.
Yes, it absolutely. You're not the person who has made that statement. But yes, I mean, I feel like it is a very spiritual pathway, but also at the same time, it works for me and it helps me to prioritize my workload. It helps me to respect other people's boundaries and also just serve people around me at a deeper level.
Okay. Now I became aware of you through your website, Deep Coalition, and the whole micro influencing thing. Tell the audience about that.
So micro influencers, I think, you guessed it right? We are not mega huge influencers out there. We don't have millions of followers or fans. So we are typically, if you Google it, we are an influencer who has less than 100,000 fans or followers. I like to really narrow that down to connections, since I don't really count followers. Anyone could follow anyone on social media today, I believe, without permission. But to connect with someone, especially on LinkedIn, that's how I came up with that micro influencer definition, is to become a micro influencer on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn allows up to 30,000 connections. I use that as the definition for a micro influencer, someone who really is on LinkedIn, who is active and who wants to connect with diverse professionals and try to build that town of 30,000 first connections to become a micro influencer.
Okay. Now I know from previous conversation you mentioned the term social leadership. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What is social leadership?
Yes. So it is different than becoming a thought leader. I think everybody knows what the definition of a thought leader is. Basically someone who is an expert in a subject or certain area or areas. But to me, a social leader, and this is not just my definition, it's out there. I forgot who was the one who coined the definition. But I, focused on when I'm trying to describe to any stranger who doesn't understand what social leadership is, a social leader is someone who focuses on three things: communication, connection, and collaboration. So by those three things, focusing on that and your efforts as you are becoming an influencer, then you are becoming that social leader who really understands how and why it's important to be an effective communicator. Why and how do you collaborate with people, like through our podcast here, to convey the different types of awareness topics that we care about to the audience. And then lastly, really just connection. What is connection? Is it dialogue, talking to someone one-on-one, or is connection simply meeting up and, at a networking event and trying to get in front of two people who are already starting a conversation and squeezing yourself in and saying hi? And so really trying to understand, in a very clear way, what is communication, what is connection, and what is, collaboration? How does all of that come together to help you become a leader with social skills that can make a difference for the few or the majority?
Interesting about what you say about social skills. I was, if someone were to look on Indeed.com and do a search on the term interpersonal, there'll be a ton of jobs where interpersonal or emotional intelligence skills are definitely needed. So I can really appreciate what you're doing with your social leadership. I think it's something that's needed a lot today. I see so many people are disconnected. If someone's in trouble on a subway or a flat tire, people will take out the cameras and film it before they actually go out and assist that person. Have you noticed that yourself?
Yes, and growing up, I was one of those people.
Ah,
So I
okay.
participated in that in my teenage years and early adulthood years, but I have since transformed. Um, yes, and I think that is just because of the way society has normalized those actions and behaviors. But where you had just mentioned that golden word of emotional intelligence or emotional connection, it's really important to understand that when it comes to becoming a social leader, because the way I see it, my pathway to harnessing and getting a grip, taking control of my emotional intelligence, that was really hard for me compared to just trying to up my IQ. Academically, I was a very good student, I would say. I think, B average, B plus was probably more like it throughout all of my school years through education. And so, but that was just studying. But then when I had to think about putting things into practice and changing my behavior, a lot of that had to be about me understanding my own emotions. And then how do I not put myself in that position of, if somebody was beating up a homeless person, and am I just gonna record it and then upload it on YouTube, and hopefully something good will happen to that homeless person after he gets beat up. Hopefully he doesn't die. Um, and so to understand just, okay, for the media to tell me what to do or what I've seen, how do I not do that and actually make a difference? Can I maybe turn on a siren on my phone that mimics a police alarm and then shout at that beater saying, I just called the police, right? Without even being a part of the fight, because I probably may not be able to win that fight with that 6 foot bully and get myself hurt. And so I think just trying to understand the emotions of the person who is being hurt in that particular situation, right? And just coming up with ways, simple ways to help, calling or shouting, right? Or just waving your hand or calling 911, without, doing all of that thing that we need to do first, those things that are, I feel are instantly, um, can be helpful at that very moment, just as, the murder of George Floyd, which right here in my hometown, Minneapolis, right? I'm grateful for the young lady who took the video recording. But those other people around, they could have done something. I don't, they could have maybe shouted at the police officer saying, you need to stop. And maybe there were some people, but there could have been more intervention, so that Mr. Floyd wouldn't have to pass so unfairly and sadly in that way. And so absolutely, emotional intelligence and social leadership, they really are, the key areas to becoming a social leader, someone who I feel, um, that pathway of learning to not just put yourself out there, but to put yourself in other people's shoes, that takes emotional intelligence. That takes becoming a social leadership and not just a thought leadership who's an expert in certain finance areas or whatever other topic that you can think of. But to me, a social leader is needed everywhere. And I feel that you can, and if you choose to, become a social leader, that is a transferable skill in the workplace and outside of the workplace.
For sure, for sure. I know that just by virtue of looking at your website, that different ways, one of the ways that you assist people to become more of a social leader is through your expressive writing. Can you tell me a bit more about what you mean when you say expressive writing and some examples of that?
Yeah, so a lot of new concepts today, right? We have social leadership, we have expressive writing. So it's when I think about perhaps the greatest skill set that I've learned through my educational years from kindergarten through college is writing. And to me, whether you're an introvert or extrovert or whatever your personality type is, whatever your top 5 strengths are, I believe that everybody, because as my son says, Mom, you don't only live once, you only die once, you live every day. So he was absolutely right when he was trying to correct me on that. But because you only die once, it's so important to express yourself. And whether you are getting an audience to agree with you or just one person, it doesn't matter. You only die once. And so through that, understanding just that little piece of information and taking it seriously, you'll be able to see, why do we want to express ourselves? Some of us want to express ourselves for gratification, for satisfaction, for acknowledgement, for recognition, all kinds of reasons. But we're humans, and part of the human, part of just being human is to express yourself. But oftentimes we are, taken aback, or we hold ourselves back because we don't have a technique, a strategy, a formula, or a recipe to go about it. Oftentimes people think that you have to maybe stream yourself live and talk using your mouth to say certain words that you want to say. But expressive writing, I feel that it's appropriate for everybody. It's, really about emotional writing. It's about writing about your feelings and your thoughts and putting that together without regard to spelling or grammar. So if you were a person who didn't have strong English skills, let's say you're in America, you have maybe broken English, which I do. Oftentimes I feel like I have broken English when I talk. But when I write, it's very smooth. And I just write as I think, and maybe there's some, spelling or grammar errors, but it's a lot smoother and clearer, and easier to read and digest. And so expressive writing is simply just emotional writing without regard to spelling or grammar. And it's writing from your heart, mind, and soul, which I feel as adults, we lost that capability. We're able to do it, but we've lost that capability. So that's another concept. To be capable of expressive writing, it's not about getting a degree and boasting it. It's about experimenting it, understanding what experiential learning is. And so through Deep Coalition, this global movement that I founded based on empathy, we decided that we would use expressive writing as that technique, that tool to train learners, employees, executives, leaders, anyone who, we're B2B. So we do go from organization to organization to try to make this an employee benefit, this expressive writing course, because it's really a system. It isn't just a course that gives you, let's say, 12 topics, 12 life topics, and you write about that. No. In order to become an expressive writer, you have to go through certain steps. There's no cutting corners. You don't just wake up one day and say you're going to write a book. You wake up one day and say, I'm going to write that first paragraph. And day two, I'm going to finish that first page. And so the same process goes with expressive writing at Deep Coalition. Our system is, basically we teach you the pathway to become an expressive writer by first, we had to identify where in the world do we want our learners, our employees to hang out. And you've probably heard of this everywhere, right, Jim? In the workplace, right now, there's a huge push for psychological safety, where people can express themselves without fear of being punished, especially employees, right? Where, no, I don't want to go to that gala. No, I don't want to participate in that workshop. I think it's silly. No, I don't want another useless event for my family that we won't enjoy. But even those things, employees are afraid to speak up. But yet we're tasking them with like the surveys. How can we make you happier? Well, expressive writing or simply helping employees to express who they really are as a person is where we need to start. And so at Deep Coalition, when we identified that expressive writing was going to be the tool, we then had to identify where we wanted the platform to be. Did we want to create an app, or do we want to leverage a digital world that was already busy? So we decided to go with the latter, that we would leverage LinkedIn because all of the professionals were already hanging out on there. So we weren't going to recreate the wheel there. And so we decided that people may misunderstand us and think that, oh, this is a course that's a LinkedIn course about navigating LinkedIn, but it's not. We're just simply using LinkedIn because you have to be careful when you're on LinkedIn, since it's a professional platform with what you say, whether you're the janitor or the CEO, because there are strong personalities on LinkedIn, whether you like it or not. And everybody's trying to stay civil, but there are ways, sometimes where you do find people who are nasty. And when you can learn how to use expressive writing in a post, and you can learn how to use expressive writing to comment on other people's different ideas from yours, you slowly become an empathetic person. You slowly become someone who is, oh, you know what? I never thought about, LGBTQ plus. Why should I care about it? I'm straight. But then you learn about it from other people and you start to wonder, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I never thought about it. Or you start to look into human trafficking, even if you're a lawyer who, it doesn't deal with that side. And you start to also worry about that topic and that world. And so expressive writing, as you continue to write through the course and you continue to meet different micro influencers, every 6 months we invite people to contribute their LinkedIn post, their content into our curriculum. It's set up very much like a college course. And so we don't just, through every module, there's 12, we don't skip and ask our learners to just go and write. Because from my own journey, having been someone who blogs a lot or journals a lot, even though, previously I've never published it on LinkedIn, it was really hard for me to just go to writing. And so we would condition our learners to first, read Jim's post on why does he think Black lives matter. Even if you're a person who, can't relate to it, read it. And then the hardest thing that we ask people to do in that course is now comment to Jim. What are you going to say? Great job, Jim? Or are you going to say, thank you for sharing? That's wonderful, all good lines, but we actually challenge and provide examples for our learners to become strong commentators. So we challenge them to write a whole paragraph to you on LinkedIn based off of your post right into the comment box. And then once they're done reading, then they're done commenting, and then we ask them to write a LinkedIn post on a topic that we provide. So that continues on for, the whole 12 modules. It repeats. And so by the time they're done with the course, they would have met 12 micro influencers because they would have read 12 micro influencers posts on whatever topics that matter to those influencers. So then that way they're actually diversifying the topics that they're learning about, because we actually try to create it where we have a CEO, we have a thought leader, we have someone who's disabled, we have someone who's a janitor, we have someone who's a teacher. And so we really try to diversify it by industry and occupation and topics, especially, so that our learners are actually feeling like, oh my God, I'm in a whole new world. Like, I'm usually always reading about financial topics, but now I'm reading about all these other topics. What's going on in my but then they finally get to uh try to challenge their emotions, to put themselves in those shoes, and are able to write emotionally about, Katiya, thank you for sharing your story about, your upbringing as a refugee child. I never knew that, you face these biases, etc. I've only seen it in movies, but I never really realized that even in America, so many people face these biases when we're not a third world country. And so it really is, the part of expressive writing is a process, and emotional writing is a process that we take them through. But it starts with reading, becoming a strong reader, and then becoming a strong commentator on LinkedIn, and then finally becoming a strong expressive writer. So that's the outcome to and the actually the strategy through those 12 modules to becoming a micro influencer.
So much emphasis is placed on technology in business that I think some people lose track that at the end of the day, people are doing business with other people. And to do business with other people better, you need to have some really good relationship skills. And to have really good relationship skills, you need to have a sense of empathy and other interpersonal skills that correlate with emotional intelligence. And I think your course is something that businesses should really give some serious consideration, because, like I said, it's one thing to have all this technology, but if the people can't relate to other people, then ultimately what good is the technology that you've invested in? So I definitely salute you in that. You've been very generous with your time. If someone wanted more information about how they can get involved with Deep Coalition or just get to know you a little bit better, how could they do that?
Well, I'm alive and breathing on LinkedIn. And so you can find me on LinkedIn and follow or connect with me. I would love to connect with anybody. And also visit deepcoalition.com, where you can learn more about a global movement and learn more about the two different ways that we help people to become more expressive, which is on that website, there's a microsite to the course page, the course syllabus, and there's also a page to the digital artwork that we do. And so one other thing that I'll briefly mention on here is sometimes it can be a little scary to jump into writing. And so we try to motivate our learners to maybe take the art route, because most people understand art or appreciate art. It's universal language in some way. And so we do try to make over people's LinkedIn profile pictures. And then that's really has been a great way for them to understand that beyond the artwork, we do this expressive writing training. And we really try to help them to understand what is true networking and what is online relationship building, because LinkedIn is the gateway. It is a networking platform. So you don't actually have to join all these networking events, because even if you did and you don't have those networking skills, it can backfire. So practice it online and, connect with the C-suite leaders, connect with people who are completely different than you. But to get there, to get them to accept you, do the social proof, write, comment, because otherwise, when you don't do that, they're not going to see more of your colors. So you can have an excellent LinkedIn profile with your degrees and your work experience, but if there's no social activity on there, then they're not really seeing the human side of you, your behavior. They're only seeing a great resume or cover letter on LinkedIn. And so it's really important, that when you're thinking about what is that one system that can help me to grow personally, professionally, and also help me to contribute to my organization's bottom line. Um, if you're thinking about those three ways of growth, then at Deep Coalition, we have built that deep system for you. And so we typically connect with HR professionals. Oftentimes employees will come to us and say, hey, I want to do this, but I'm not a decision maker. We also provide that access to individuals, consumers who want to just buy the course for themselves. It's pricier that way since we do try to target the entire organization and get them to become a partner with us for the next 5 to 10 years. And so either way, we work with both individuals and organizations to try to make this work for you to help you grow beyond what you're capable of or what you think you're capable of in your current organization.
Right. And to make it even easier, I'll leave some links in the podcast description as well to your website, deepcoalition.com. Thank you so much for your time. This has been very enlightening. I do appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me, Jim, and thank you for listening and tuning in, folks.
Well, my time is up. I thank you for yours. I'll see you again real soon right here with a brand new episode of the Jim Stroud Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. I can be reached by email at jimstroud@jimstroud.com. And one last favor, if I may ask, please rate this podcast. 5 stars is preferred, but please comment with your honest opinion. I really appreciate that. All right? Okay, until next time, bye-bye.